This video is brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook and Casino.
Hello guys, and welcome back. With the 2024 NHL Draft just a few weeks away, we're going to be pumping out the content here on the channel with mock drafts, rankings, and a lot more. And today we're going to be going through the players that are rising and falling before the 2024 NHL Draft. Players that after the U18 World Juniors, the World Championships, are starting to see their stock rise or fall. So make sure you watch till the end for all of the draft analysis because you won't want to miss a thing. And hit that subscribe button if you're new for more draft content just like this as we lead up to the draft, because there's gonna be so much for you guys to sink your teeth into. I promise. Now, getting this started today with the biggest riser in this class, really over the last month, but is somebody that could really find himself inside the top 10, the top 5, and was for a lot of people not even a first rounder in the first couple months of the year. We need to talk about Beckett Sennecke. Honestly, one of the biggest risers over the last couple of months, Sennecke has been a player really putting himself in a major position recently, and as somebody, I wouldn't be surprised to see go inside the top 8 even. Really, the big difference with Sennecke is the height difference and how that's kind of affected his game. At the start of the last OHL season, he was around 5'10". Now he's a 6'2", 180-pound wing. And at the start of the season, you could see the clunkiness trying to get adjusted to that frame. He had 22 points in his first 25 games, and he was a little bit slow out of the gate. But I think he got a lot more confident, and really the skating was able to come a long way. It's still not perfect by any means, but Sennecke is a player that has really gotten used to his frame and is using it in a major way. You can see he ended the season off with 68 points in 63 games, and the playoffs was brilliant for Oshawa, getting 10 goals, 22 points in 16 games. To me, there are still some concerns with the actual speed with his skating and the way he's able to knock off pressure. He's somebody that I still think will need to get used to using that frame to actually take advantage of it, shielding the puck, getting around pressure, but the skill set is incredible. The playmaking, the vision, the electric deking ability, and the way to drive the net. Sennecke has a lot of great options, and if he's somebody you like inside the top 10, I can see exactly why. Don't be surprised if teams like Calgary, Ottawa end up taking him, and even, of course, the Montreal Canadiens at 5th overall. But let's keep going through the risers, and this is somebody that has been a lot more highly regarded coming into the year and throughout the season, but I think especially with the Memorial Cup and just how influential he was is going to get even more hype on him, and that's Zayne Parekh, who, of course, was a part of the Memorial Cup winning Saginaw Spirit, and another incredible playoffs, honestly, playing some of his best hockey, even though the point totals weren't absolutely bonkers, getting 11 points in 13 games. I thought we were starting to see more defensive responsibility out of him, a little bit more maturity, and just a little more consistency. That was really the big problem with Parekh to me, was the posture. It was the defensive responsibility, the attitude towards it. Yes, I want to see defensemen want to get out of their zone as quick as possible, but in Parekh's case, there was a lot of forcing, there was a lot of bad habits there that were big problems to me. But I think that is something that Parekh has started to change throughout the season and starting to get a lot better at, and especially in the playoffs, improving as well. And I've started to warm up to him a lot more. The offense is incredible. The playmaking, the vision is spectacular on the blue line. And at the very least, I think he's going to be a solid middle pair, offensive power play quarterback, and could be even more than that. And again, I still think either Ottawa or Seattle are slam dunks for him. To me, there is no way he goes past number 8. Now we're going to go to another offensive D in the CHL that has really seen his stock rise over the past few months, from a guy that could have been a second rounder to a player now that could be inside the top 5. Let's go on to Connor Yakimchuk, folks. Honestly, going to be one of the most interesting D to look back on. At 6'3", 195 pounds, he's one of the oldest players in this draft, and throughout the Calgary Hitman campaign was just racking up points, 30 goals, 71 points in 66 games. Obviously, with a physical edge as well of 120 penalty minutes. To me, the strengths with Yakimchuk are extremely high. The shooting ability, the confidence from the blue line, the ability to deke anybody out of their jock straps that they try to go for him along that blue line. It is a scary thing to try to oppose him. Yakimchuk has a lot of good qualities in the offensive zone, but he kind of reminds me of Cole Eiserman in a way, where his style of defense is just trying to play physically and not much more than that. He doesn't really have a great grasp of the game. His overall vision and positioning on the ice leaves a lot to be desired, and he can sometimes get flat out beat. His skating is not great. It's not very fast, not very agile, and to me, that could both limit the defensive game and the offensive game at the next level. I think in the best case scenario, you're getting a John Klingberg here, where he can put up great offensive numbers, but you'll have to shelter him a little bit defensively, and at worst, I could see him being a player that coaches never even touch, because they just can't trust him away from the puck. But like a lot of other players that have been rising recently, I can see where teams are coming from, and he's definitely somebody that I think you could mold still into a competent NHLD, but I think it'll take a lot for that to happen, and considering his age too, where he's one of the oldest players in that draft, to me, there's a little bit less runway than other prospects would have. Corey Promen's list has him quite high. You also got Sam Constantino doing the same thing, and even in Bob McKenzie's recent rankings, it talked about Yakimchuk having a couple of suitors that had him as a top 5 prospect in this class. Honestly, if a team like Columbus were to end up taking him 4th overall, that wouldn't surprise me. Now, before we continue with the risers, I first want to talk about today's sponsor in BetUS, and of course, so many options with the Stanley Cup Final locked in. You can go through the different games when we get closer to the actual games of the series. You can also go through, before the series starts, the series prizes and who you think wins. Right now, minus 130 for the Panthers and plus 110 for the Oilers. If you're riding the Oilers train, those are some pretty good odds for you. You can also go through just the series prizes for every player, how many points, how many goals they might get, and these are some of my favorite ones. Right now, in terms of players to score 3+ goals in the series, Sam Bennett is plus 550. He has 3 goals over his last 3 playoff games. To me, that's pretty good. I'm going to put $10 down to win 55, and we'll see what happens. But to make your own Stanley Cup Final picks, go in the description and sign up to BetUS. It helps the channel a lot, and of course, has been allowing me to make a lot more videos for you guys, so every bit is appreciated. Now, we're going to keep going through the D because there's been a lot of D in this class that have been rising quite a bit recently, and honestly, one of the biggest risers just within this last month window has been Stian Solberg out of Norway. And for me, he's also been somebody that I've been enlightened quite a bit. He was more of a second rounder for me throughout a lot of this draft process. I love the physical tools, I like the skating, and I love the aggressiveness, but it wasn't much more than that. But what he's been able to show recently hasn't really shown me that there will be top-end NHL offensive numbers, but I think he could fill into a Gudis type of role at the NHL level. Now, if you guys don't know, Solberg is a 6'2", 201-pound AD, and to me is by far the best physical defenseman of this class. He doesn't chase pucks, he doesn't chase players. He makes sure his physical play is in the right positions at the right times. He knows when to assert himself, and that is one of the most important things to me for a physical defensive D. And he's also defensively a pretty good defenseman outside of that. His stick is active, it's effective, and the way he uses his body to just assert pressure is honestly brilliant for his age. He's a smooth skater too, and I think transitionally has gotten better throughout the year, putting up more and more offense, and in the playoffs, 9 points in 17 games. Although the main league in Norway isn't fantastic or anything, it's not a slouch, and he's playing against pro competition. He was also great at the World Championships as well for Norway. I thought he had a great showing there, and next year is going to be a full-time SHLer, which I think he could absolutely achieve. He's somebody that I don't think has this unbelievable ceiling, but I think can really fill well into this middle pair role where you just give him all the defensive responsibilities and you really don't have to worry about it. Honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised to see him inside the top 15, around that range. I could see St. Louis taking him, maybe even San Jose, of course, getting Celebrini if they want a D, if they want something punishing for the future. Solberg would be a pretty great fit. Now let's keep going and go to a player that is similar, although in a little bit of a lesser tier for me, in EJ Emery out of the NTDP. He's somebody that, especially with the U18 World Juniors, has really seen his stock rise, and honestly, I could absolutely see why. To me, he was one of the best D in that tournament, if not the best defensively, and you can see he was actually pretty good offensively too, 6 assists in 7 games, but to me was a rock alongside Cole Hutson in that tourney. He was just so good at opposing his will, on using the boards to create defensive turnovers, on just using his body and physicality and the God-given talent that he has in the right way. And that's something that I wanted to see more out of him. I wanted to see more of that physical play. I wanted to see more of him using it in the right positions at the right times. And he's starting to find that timing a lot more throughout the year. He's somebody that I could also see going especially high in this draft. I don't know if he would go as high as Solberg, but I think with the U18s, how good he was there, you could probably see him around the 25s, maybe even 16 range. Would not be surprised if any team took him there. Now we're going to go to a forward here, and that has really risen a lot for me, and especially for a lot of other people, and that's Parekh of the Brantford Bulldogs. I remember somebody asking me about him earlier in the season, and I only had a couple of viewings of him, wasn't the biggest fan, but since then, I've actually come to enjoy him quite a bit. He's somebody that actually, even as a riser, didn't have the best U18s in the world. He had 1 goal in 6 games, but he was apparently hurt throughout that tournament, which does make sense. He was not playing his best hockey. But in the regular season with Brantford, you can see in 68 games, he got 36 goals, 82 points. It was pretty good in the playoffs too. 7 points in 6 games offensively, putting up some good numbers there. I think really with Vanacker, he's going to be settling into this third line role where he's this opportunistic scorer, but versatile around the net, good on the boards, has a good motor to him, and is just responsible in a lot of different ways. To me, there's nothing that stands out with Vanacker personally, but he's just a very well-rounded player, and also I think just has a lot of room for growth too. I think this is somebody that's not going to be this first line player for you, but if you get him outside the first round, to me, that's pretty good value. And I could absolutely see him reaching up to maybe the later half of that first, maybe around the late 20s. You know what you're getting in Vanacker, and that to me is why we've seen his stock rise quite a bit. Somebody that I've also seen a lot of people come up recently talking about and really liking is Yegor Shurin, who is somebody that has really gone under the radar throughout a lot of this season, and not really for great reasons in my opinion. He's somebody that really doesn't play like most NHL players play. He is intense, his work ethic is extremely good. It's consistent. Every single shift, Shurin is somebody out there that is trying to make good things happen. That's in every zone of the ice, not just offensively. Unlike a lot of NHL players, he's somebody that's engaged defensively, turning over pucks, creating pressure, and applying that to transition up the zone. He's also somebody that is incredibly young for this draft class, being an August birth date, and considering what he was able to do in the MHL this year, getting 52 points in 42 games, and also the playoffs too, having 9 more points than anybody on his team with Logo Yaroslavo, getting 23 points in 19 games. Shurin was really dominating in every single way. He's somebody that I do have a couple of concerns with. I don't think the edge work skating-wise is impeccable. I think there are times where it's a little bit clumsy. There is some good straight line speed though to work with, and maybe that's able to improve. I also do think the hockey sense at times can be a little bit lackadaisical, kind of being off position, not really knowing where to be, and that could kind of limit him, especially if that's already a problem at the MHL level. But besides that, I could absolutely see Shurin being a honey badger top 9 type of piece that on your third line is just able to complement so many pieces well and just bring energy that you want to see. Now let's go to a player that is not too far different from Shurin in a lot of ways, and that's Sam O'Reilly, a player that I've loved throughout a lot of this draft year and just continue loving, honestly. He's somebody that I thought had a strong playoffs, a strong Memorial Cup, and even though it didn't go London's way, to me it wasn't Sam O'Reilly's fault in any way. But at 6'1", 176 pounds, you can see what he was able to do. Nothing over a point per game at this point, but to me, he's somebody that was playing in the Go GHL just a year ago, and is somebody that has already risen so much, already played up to expectations in a strong way. But it's the forechecking, it's the speed, it's the way he's able to put pressure on defenders, it's the way he's able to knock off pucks, create pressure, and really just create chaos. I mean, this is an agent of chaos, Sam O'Reilly, and to me, he's somebody that's just going to get the puck back, is going to be strong along the boards, is going to be able to make things happen. And to me, that's what you want to have, especially as third liners in the future. To me, O'Reilly gives you exactly what you want to have in your bottom 6. Now we go back to the defensive side of things and go on to a player that has really risen with the U18 World Juniors, and that is Cole Hutson. Now it's kind of interesting to just look at the stock for him around, because I think a lot of people are thinking that he could be worse than his brother in Lane Hutson. To me, I think he will be slightly behind Hutson in ways, but I don't think that should discredit Cole Hutson in any way. To me, Lane is a fantastic prospect, and I think Hutson is around that range too. Throughout the second half of the NCDP, I thought he played a lot better, and you can see at the U18 World Juniors, in 7 games, he got 4 goals, 9 assists, 13 points, which is just proving how good of a transitional D he can be, how much of an offensive thinker he can be as well, and that was really aided well with the options that the US had offensively. Hutson was just able to wheel and deal and do so much with them. I do think he isn't as purely exciting as his brother Lane, and I do think physically there are times where he might be even less mature than Lane was, but honestly, he isn't that far behind, and especially considering where I think Lane might go in a redraft if it were to happen today, maybe Cole could find himself in the first round, as GMs don't want to make the same mistake they did. Now we keep going and go on to a defenseman that I'm sure not a lot of you might have actually heard of at all going into this video, but I wanted to give some appreciation to, and somebody that I think could actually work his way a lot up the draft board this year, and that's Terrence Smith out of the Everett Silvertips. He's somebody that I think a few months ago might not have been on many people's radars, but has really been rising with every new ranking that gets put out there. He's somebody that I've really started to appreciate with the potential he could bring, and I think a lot of the reason why he wasn't talked about much was because he really didn't play much last year. In his second WHL season, or what was supposed to be, he had a big, huge injury, which only limited him to 8 games in the WHL last year. But this season, especially as the second half came on, he was really able to play so much better as an overall product. You can see in 67 games at Everett this year, 44 points, and in the playoffs was pretty impeccable too. To me, with Terrence Smith, it's the digging ability, it's the electrifying ability to create plays in the offensive zone, get around pressure, use his body as well. That's something that I think has really matured a lot. And there were some big issues with me defensively early on in the year, being engaged, being in the right positions, and there still is a lot of refinement that I think needs to happen. But Smith is going to be a fascinating case because he's somebody that brings a lot of potential in a lot of areas of the game, but just needs more time and patience to make that happen. I do think you give him a couple years in the WHL to really refine himself, but he's somebody that I wouldn't be surprised as a first rounder in a redraft in 10 years. He just has a lot of talent and is finally starting to unlock it. Now, we talked about a lot of the players rising throughout the last month, players that I could see really being surprises for how high they go up, but now we're going to go to the other side. We're going to flip the coin and go on to the fallers. Guys, over the last couple months, I think have really lessened their draft stock for various reasons. First, we got to start out with Liam Greentree. Even though he's still my boy, he has been lessened a bit for me as well. I'm going more from the 10 range to the 15 range. I think that's likely where we will see him go, around that 15 to 22 spot in the draft, and that makes sense. I think in the U18 World Juniors with that bigger ice, you saw the limitations in his skating. You saw the limitations with the edge work and really the explosiveness. It just wasn't there, and he wasn't able to create separation speed and actually be able to beat defenders. That was a problem, and it definitely limited him. But I think because that skating is a massive issue, I think because of the U18s and how rough it went, we could see him going more in the 20 to 25 range, honestly. I wouldn't be surprised to see it happen. But we keep going, and next up I'm going to go to Nikita Artamonov, somebody that I was very high on at the beginning of the season, but because of his poor performance over the second half has been lower for a lot of people, including me. To me, I think the big thing of Artamonov will be keeping the game simple. He's not the greatest skater, and I also don't think he's the greatest deker in the world, but he kind of plays like he was a little bit in that second half, and I think it limited how much he was able to actually provide for the team offensive output and effectiveness on the ice. To me, of Artamonov, he is going to be his best when he's great on the rush, a solid passer, is going to be able to spot lanes and spot players coming up and really make things happen. But to me, that's going to be the biggest thing. Is Artamonov going to be able to play that game? Is he going to have enough muscle and a good enough skating ability to actually be the forechecker that he will probably have to settle on being at the NHL level? That, to me, I think is a reason why he might fall a little bit, is because of the lack of clear-cut role. And I think it's a worthy concern. It's a reason why he's kind of felt more of a late first, early second guy to me, rather than a mid-rounder in this first. And I think a lot of teams will probably echo that sentiment. Now, let's keep going and go on to a guy that has really had an unfortunate year this year in a lot of different ways, and that's Aron Kiviharju out of Finland. He's somebody that coming into the year was obviously one of the highest regarded prospects, but now is probably more likely to be maybe even a late second in this draft, rather than a true first rounder. He's somebody that, like Artamonov, is just hard to really find a role for in the future. He's a good passer, but not a great skater, doesn't have great footwork, and that's going to limit him with his height. He's not extremely physical either, and doesn't really have that defensive edge that you really want to see either. He's a good passer and has some good hockey sense, but those two things aren't going to make you an NHL player. You have to be more balanced, and Kiviharju just isn't there, or doesn't really even feel close to it at this point. Now we go into a forward that is honestly one of the most raw prospects you could ever imagine, and that's John Mustard, somebody that made his way in my first round a few months ago. Since then, though, has kind of slipped a little bit for me. He's one of the youngest players in this class, and you could absolutely tell, being an August birthday, he is so unrefined, it's honestly ridiculous. But this is a guy that is so good with his speed, has so much skating ability there, that to me, I think you would be interested to bet on, especially in the mid rounds. He's somebody, though, that especially off the puck and using his speed can be a really effective player, can get pucks back, and I think that's going to be really the value with John Mustard to the next level. And if he's able to turn that skill set forward, he's somebody that I think could be really interesting. But I just don't think he really handles physical pressure well, especially in those smaller ice surfaces. That is a big issue for him. And to me, when the going gets tough, Mustard kind of crumbles. He is especially young, and also considering that was his first USHL season, playing U16 last year, there's a lot of runway there, but at the very least, you're going to need to be patient for Mustard to become anything. But I also just think the lack of really any completeness in his game at all will turn a lot of scouts away and likely result in Mustard being maybe even a fourth rounder when it's all said and done. Now we go into the last player of the list that I want to talk about today, and somebody that I think is going to massively fall in this draft class, and that is Luke Misa. Somebody that I think for some people might have been a first rounder in this class is somebody that I honestly could see dropping to the 5th round. It could be that serious. There is some obvious strengths. I think the skating and the straight line speed is impeccable. He's somebody I think also off the puck is pretty well engaged. He's smartly positioned. He's somebody that can strip off pucks if you're not expecting him. And he's somebody that I think can quietly be a solid transitional player. I do think that will be really good once he goes to pro levels, once he's able to need a more all-around game. I think Misa has the intentions of doing that. But I just think his frame, the physicality, the muscle is not nearly where it needs to be. And that is the major concern. Will he be able to bulk up? Will he be able to be more than he is? Because that will be the big thing that could limit him. For a smaller center that is a little bit one note offensively, and somebody that is going to be a little bit of a question mark to actually be able to bulk up at least, or be ready for the NHL level, he's somebody that I could absolutely see why teams would have lower. I'm kind of meeting in the middle. He's a second rounder for me, and somebody that I'm willing to take a bet on, but I would not be surprised if he isn't even an NHLer and doesn't even touch a game there. But those are some of my risers and fallers right before the NHL draft, and right now things are crazy. We're going to be pumping out a ton of draft content for you guys, but hopefully you guys ended up enjoying all the scouting reports, all the prospect talk. I mean, right now I'm trying to finalize everything I'm doing right now and try to watch as much as possible, so hopefully you guys enjoy all the prospect talk and all the scouting reports. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe, and hit the notification bell so I can make more draft videos just like this. And of course, make sure you comment down below all your thoughts on my risers, my fallers, where you think these guys might go, who you like, who you don't like on this list. I would love to know all your thoughts. Of course, make sure you share a video with all the hockey fans you guys know online to get them prepared for the draft this year, and click on this card for all my 2024 draft content in one playlist. So much for you there to binge with mock drafts over rankings, and you won't want to miss out on a thing, so make sure you do it there, and I will see you in the next one. I hope you have a great hockey day, y'all, and goodbye.